It's finally here. Finally, the final episode in my 5-part series analyzing The Walking Dead. In this series, we went episode by episode, dissecting little dialogues, things I found interesting, neat interactions with different choices, and multiple other tangents. If you've noticed a upgrade in the quality of my mic, that is because there has been an upgrade in the quality of my microphone. I got a new microphone for GDQ. It went really well, by the way. And now I can record with greater quality. Unfortunately, this quality will not transfer over to the rest of this video because the recordings done for this video were done before I got the microphone. So yeah, my next project will use the greater quality microphone. I hope you understand that re-recording 40 minutes plus of voiceover and then re-editing it based on the editing I'd already done would be a lot of work, and I would like to finish this series. During this series over the course of the year, there have been many life-changing decisions I have both had to make for myself and occurring to others. There has also been many life-changing events, both good and bad. So it's been a journey, but I am glad to be here at the very end of this journey, the Walking Dead series. One that I have been very passionate about, and I hope that it's been seen in the work that I've done. Episode 5 is a triumph in storytelling, not only because of the bittersweet, difficult, and sad ending, but also because this is basically the start of a long journey of games which have brought me so much self-reflection and introspection. I'm somewhat of a writer myself, and I've taken lessons learned from the writing in this story and tried to transfer it into my own media. So without further ado, let us analyze the closing chapter of the first Walking Dead game, the start of a journey for some and the end of a journey for others. We pick up in episode 5 where we left off, with the line Lee chose last episode. The stranger gives us no further information, just a veiled threat, and that Clementine will be safe before hanging up. His tone is accusatory. If we tell him not to hurt her, he'll reply,
"Hurt her? I'm not the one who hurts people."
if you have your whole crew with you, they'll prevent walkers coming through the door, with Kenny saying one of my favorite lines.
We're about to have a lot less. We'll all make sure nothing gets in. You're still the smartest fucker out of all of us. Try to find another way out of here.
There's something about Kenny, this character who's been through it all with you, who's seen your mistakes, your victories, how you've overcome every obstacle and challenge, and in his family's final moments, you were helping make the calls. Even if you had to encourage him to come along, he respects your choices. This is the first moment I think Kenny's character arc starts to emerge. It's been a subtle build up to this point, but now he's outright saying it. We find assorted autopsy tools in the top cupboard, as well as a saw. There's an elevator on the opposite side, and we use the rib spreader to start opening the doors. Lee takes a fall from the fever, and we get the title card. When we wake up, if you have your group with you, they'll debate cutting your arm off. There's a bit of a debate, and a moment I think anyone with a disability can relate to. The group starts discussing whether they should cut your arm off, almost ignoring your input. At least they leave the choice up to you. On my first playthrough, I cut it off, hoping this could, at least, slow down the process, if anything. If you're by yourself, you can still cut off your own arm, and damn, that's metal. Regardless, it's an extremely gruesome scene that's not for the faint of heart, but you've made it this far into this game, so this isn't anything new. There are some differences which we'll touch on when it comes to choosing to cut your arm off or not, but for now, we're treated to a bit of body horror as Lee now has to deal with the knowledge he has no arm and has no time to get used to that before having to climb a fucking ladder. If you don't cut off your arm, Lee will pass out on the ladder. The banter between all the characters here is some of my favorite, and a much needed dose of human interaction between them given everything that's going on. Doing this all by yourself is haunting. The isolation as a sole man, so solid in his convictions he'd choose to do this all by himself. The top of the service ladder takes us to the roof of the abandoned hospital, with the words "No help" scrawled in paint in a frivolous attempt at attracting helicopters or some such. If you're alone here, you can look out at the state of Savannah, Currently, there are so many walkers, they're kicking up dust clouds as far as the eye can see. It's highly likely the train you rode in on has brought them here. This is probably what we'll refer to in the later games as a herd. A herd is a massive amount of walkers in a located area that move together, which makes sense because walkers in any given area would probably be attracted to the sounds in that area. We can even see this from Molly ringing the bells, how effective this method of control is. Encounters with herds are extremely dangerous, and they're used in the games, shows, and comics. It's meant to highlight the desperation of the situation. The odds are so overwhelmingly treacherous that surviving will require an intricate strategy to manage them. If you have the other members of the group with you, there's discussions you can have with them. Omid will talk about the bell and ask what we're going to do when we catch the stranger that kidnapped Clementine, and to be honest with you, there's only one response I ever choose in this moment.
When we get this fucker, we'll get out of sight and leave you with him. You get me?
I get you.
Krista will talk about how much dust the walkers kick up, and Lee mentions he used to have allergies, but he simply doesn't have the luxury to even notice those things anymore. As an allergy sufferer, I can tell you how dead I'd be if I had any hay fever in this situation. Kenny is taking a moment to himself. He doesn't know how to answer you about how he is, but there's one thing on his mind. And after everything that's happened, maybe he sees Lee and Clementine as an extension of his family, something that's still worth fighting for. It has to be worth it, otherwise losing Katja and Duck would be in vain. Ben looks down at the herd of walkers, his worst nightmare. Ben desperately wants to be helpful, not just for the group and Clementine, but to prove to Kenny that he's not useless. There's a bell on the roof, and we bring a ladder over to it, and then...
Oh, shit.
Huh?
Well, at least we made it across. We ring the bell, which attracts the walkers, and make a daring leap across. The group quickly runs down and returns to the house. Depending on your group's mixture of who came and who stayed, the boat ends up being stalled by Vernon and members of their group, and your group gets overpowered by them. I'd also like to note that there's a little myth around the boat stealing part, where some people believe that Kenny could steal the boat if you were a massive dick to him, and that's just flat out not true. It kind of reminds me of those old school video game days where people would come up with strange stories about how to get Mew in Pokemon Red. But I guess that's how most FNAF lore was figured out, right? That's just a theory. A film. If the whole group comes with us, we find a note left by Vernon. Kenny has a classic Kenny moment.
Fucking wait. The invalids?
Stay classy, Kenny. I'd like to discuss a fight that happens if Ben is alive. Kenny will aggressively mouth off to Ben while Ben suggests taking a step back to assess the situation. Kenny is about to go on another verbal assault when this happens.
Clementine is who the fuck knows, and we're robbed of the only hope we've had. So Lee should have left your ass in Crawford. We got enough problems. Fuck you, Kenny!
Whoa, Ben.
No, let him. I am so sorry about Katja and Duck. I am! And I know I fucked up. But stop pushing me around and stop wishing I was dead! No! You know how they die. You've said goodbye. I never got to see my family, my parents, my little sister. Do you get that? Your family is gone, but at least you had them to lose. I never made it home. They could be alive, or dead, or walkers, or worse, and I don't know! So give me a fucking break!
Ben throughout this entire game has been seen as useless or even dangerous to the people around him with his poor decision making. But very few times do we, as the player, consider what he's been through. His mistake may have endangered Kenny's family, but ultimately, whether he stole supplies or not, the bandits would still have attacked. Who's to say that being attacked on a different time or day would have resulted in a better or worse encounter? He doesn't know the situation of his own family. He's been separated from everyone he cared about, or they died as well. Why doesn't he deserve the same leniency we're giving to Kenny? No time for that. The walkers are coming. The group rushes inside the house. Lee orders out how to fight them, which can be really funny if you choose Ben to grab the weapons.
Kill anything that gets in.
You know you're talking to me, right?
Ben, just do it!
I don't know, it made me chuckle. We kick off a walker that grabbed us and rush to close the front doors. Lee cuts the arms of the walkers off, and the group looks for their next move.
Get ready to fight.
This place seems sturdy to me. I think we're fine.
Sturdy my ass! Get upstairs!
Go!
Man, this section feels like a finale. We get upstairs and use a desk as a barricade. There's not much ammo left, so the plan is to look for an opening. There's too many, and after you've fired your 5 shots, you're powerless. Luckily, the attic, as established earlier, is available for your group to climb into. Now the group is stuck in the attic. Safe for now. If you didn't cut off your arm, you will actually pass out here for a little bit. The radio bursts to life, and Clementine gives you a clue as to where she is before it cuts off. Kenny initiates a conversation about their predicament. They have a bite victim locked up in here with them who could die and turn at any moment. There's no escape. Kenny is trying to argue that this is a legitimate threat and the rest of the group needs to discuss this and concern themselves with their own survival. Things get heated.
Just talk about it.
Does that conversation end with me getting something dropped on my head?
Now, hey!
Guys, I don't know what happened before Omid and I showed up, but we can cross this bridge when we get to it.
Lee, I'm not advocating anything here, but how is this not a thing? We're all so worked up about Clementine that we're forgetting what the fuck happened to you.
What if it was you, and it was Duck out there?
Whoa there, friend.
I bet you'd rather stay focused on the problem, not have people turn on you.
This is getting out of hand.
You're gonna listen to me. We will get Clementine back, with or without you, because I haven't given up everything to die because we were stupid.
Then kill me, you son of a bitch, okay? Don't even fucking hesitate!
I will.
Choosing to throw this bust at Kenny can either be in character or not, depending on how you've played your Lee. But I could see justifications for many outcomes here. It's a small one, but it is emotionally moving. This is one of the final conflicts between you and Kenny. The wood on the side of the attic is corroded. There's a chance they could get themselves an exit. Thankfully, whomever threw that bust saved their lives. Sitting down while the others work allows for a quiet moment with Omid and Krista. They ask how you're feeling, and Lee can be honest. They talk about Ben, and Lee can choose to be harsh or sympathetic, saying that either he'll figure himself out or die, or he needs people to help him to become more independent. They mention how choosing to conceal or show your bite affected their choice to come with you. Lee can also discuss here who he wants to take care of Clementine. Whether he chooses Kenny or Omid and Krista in the situation will probably depend on your interpretation of Kenny as a character, and Omid and Krista, of course. Omid takes the next shift of reverse construction work. Kenny sits down and you talk about Ben and you share with Kenny how he wanted to die. Kenny is glad he didn't make that call. He has an enormous amount of remorse about placing so much hate on one kid, as if that would make it any better. He'll also share his disbelief that you got bitten and admire you for telling people, or sympathize with you for not telling people. Kenny didn't think he would tell people if he got bitten. This shows a level of nuance and understanding in the choice. Most people would assume that being honest would be the best call, but could you blame someone for not telling people, especially people who you may not even trust very much at this point? You can choose to share a drink with Kenny with a bottle he found next to the couch. I feel like if any time was an excuse for a drink, it would be when you're dying and someone you've known through all of this would like to share some semblance of camaraderie with you. You can make some gut-wrenching choices in this game, and somehow the worst for me is the little things you can choose to be just that much more of a cold asshole. Kenny will offer Krista a drink, and despite her being pregnant, she'll take one. Kenny, being dumber than a bag of hammers, only figured this out now. Luckily, this attic leads to an adjoining house with a quaint living space, and on the bed, a couple that shot themselves to go out together. This sets off Kenny to say one of the most memorable speeches in the game for me.
This.
It's what Katya did.
You did everything you could.
No, Lee. She left me. A son. People that cared about us. I forgive her, but it don't make it any less wrong. You don't just end it because it's hard. You stick it out, and you help the folks you care about. So let's figure a way out of here and get that little girl.
You look after the folks you care about. You keep going. Why would you stop going? Why would you give up when there's folks you care about? How many things will you miss because you've opted to take yourself out of the equation? Kenny understands this, but he's also angry. It makes sense. Katja left when there were people still worth fighting for. She chose to leave. But now, Kenny can make it right, better than he's ever done. The gun has one shot left. Kenny takes it, and we can trust that he's not going to use that bullet for himself, because he's got purpose once again. Omid will talk about how much pain the couple avoided. There is a small moment that adds a little bit of humor to the scene. In fact, two, where you can ask what a thing is, and then Omid will shrug and say art, as well as discussing the couple's channel preferences. There's an exit on the least stable balcony I've ever seen in my life. Well, no, I've actually seen a more flimsy one in my life, but no one would think to jump from it. Desperate times, I guess. Everyone jumps across, but just before Ben jumps across,
Ben!
Me and my fucking mouth.
Holy fuck! What are we gonna do?
Kenny rushes down the ladder to try and help Ben, but clearing the debris reveals that Ben has been impaled. We try to get him up, but the moans he makes trying to get him off the ground alerts walkers. There's no time.
Get the fuck out of here.
What?
Go back! She needs you, Lee.
Kenny!
This is not a discussion!
Okay, I'm going.
Good! Get back up there! Now!
This is suicide, Kenny. You can't do this!
Fucking go!
This was my ending to Kenny on my first playthrough. A man who's seen the error of his actions, that his value of family became so distorted that he was willing to pin everything on this one kid. And now, that kid who gave him the perspective he needed to change and finally take action. He uses the last bullet to spare a kid a horrible death before we see him taken by the herd. Kenny can die in one scene later when he sacrifices himself to save Krista, but I'm going to talk about him here as well as Ben. Kenny acts as a foil or mirror to the main character. He's the embodiment of the nuclear family, and everything he does is done in service of protecting his family from whatever troubles affect this world. He's a practical man who would rather fix a truck than deal with the intricacies of debating adults on the best course of action. His way is always the correct way. If you want him to trust you, you have to buy into his perspective. We can even see when Lee confesses he's on his way to prison that Kenny's concern only lies on whether what Lee did would lead to harm to his found family. In the group, Kenny is also more bark than bite. The most decisive he can be is when he has the approval of the other person who he looks to for those choices. Only when he's pushed to the very edge will he take action. In some ways, he's a man that thrives on fixing mechanical problems but not personal ones. His story can end one of two ways here, and if I make a video on season 2, we'll get to discuss his character more. If you have solid family values, Kenny's character will be endearing, and in a game that's very much about the dadification of Lee, it makes sense you'd be family oriented through the whole experience. Ben isn't as fleshed out. We meet him in episode 2, and for the most part, he becomes a bit of the furniture at times. When you do interact with him, it's mostly apparent that he is the archetype of an inexperienced teenager thrown in way over his head. He clearly wants to do things that benefit the group, but is also conflict avoidant, which leads him to do things he believes have a utilitarian benefit without consulting the others and arguably ending up costing people's lives. If he had just come clean, Lily may not have killed Doug or Carly, though arguably still Doug because Lily shot him when he jumped in front of the bullet to save Ben. Ben is still a kid and he's learning how to navigate the world, and the world being vastly more hostile isn't helping what would have been his journey into adulthood. His story ending here saddens me because I can't help but see a kid who only wants to do the right thing while messing up along the way. His moment of clapping back to Kenny is one of my favorites in the game because it just shows you how much the writers set you up to dislike him, only to bring you right back to understanding what he's going through. his perspective. After climbing back up, we can tell Omid and Krista what Lee thinks happened, and some of these are just absolutely not what happened and come across as choice for choice's sake. Or maybe you're meant to interpret it as any event being likely. I don't know, it's a bit weird. Talking to Krista and Omid, you can mention Kenny was your friend. During the conversation about whether you want Omid, Krista, or Kenny to take Clementine, Lee is offered this choice again, whether saying that they would be good for her or if they should find a group for her instead. This moment of quiet serves a strong function here. We're meant to have a moment to think about everything. I mentioned that Kenny would also save Krista here if Krista falls into the hole full of walkers, so that's also an option if you don't save Ben. In front of us there's a rickety sign. We're only a block away from the Marsh house. No matter if we go first or not, the sign breaks and we can't climb up. So Lee says,
Fuck it. I'm going for it.
Going for it?
What does that mean?
It means I'm already bitten. I just have to push my way through.
What the fuck? But maybe you got to it fast enough. Maybe you'll be fine.
I can't risk losing more time on a long shot.
With nothing but a horde of walkers in the way, the music swells. If you didn't cut off your arm, Lee crushes a shard of glass in his second hand, and we're taken to Lee's moment. He cuts through every walker who gets close, their blood splattering all over him. He can even get a second bite here. It doesn't matter. Nothing will keep him from Clementine. He will save her. He has to save her. He cuts through them and holds nothing back. This bite he got was a symbol of his sacrifices and freedom. He has one more purpose. We enter the Marsh house covered in walker guts. The car outside clearly being the car we stole from in episode 2. Now it all comes together. Our past actions haunting us as we approach the door and walk into a room with a rope attached to the door and the closet. The stranger sneaks up behind us. Clementine yells for help, and the second time in this game, we're told to be quiet as a gun clicks in our face. He tells you to disarm yourself, and you can lie here convincingly. When you sit down, he asks you a simple question. Do you know who he is? It's kind of funny if you say no here.
No. I don't know anything about you.
You wouldn't. People like you don't.
The stranger asks if we've ever hurt someone, and you have the option to say no here as well. You can play the most tone deafly, and I love the game for that. Speaking to the stranger, he tells you about who he is and also what happened to his family after all their stuff was gone. Also, he lost his son while they were out hunting, which was arguably more of a catalyst to his wife and daughter running away than the loss of all their stuff. His reasoning that he could have rationalized them losing their son if all their stuff wasn't stolen, which got me thinking, why would that change the situation? He clearly did something negligent, and an attempted excuse for the repercussion of his actions just doesn't fly here. He asks if you see him as a monster. If you say we all look like monsters, there's an Animal Farm reference here.
We all do.
Some more than others.
He'll summarize your major choices throughout the game, and it's so hilarious if you've made the non-violent choices because his arguments end up having, no weight to them. Lee has justified sins to atone for, or the stranger is huffing so much copium I'm surprised his eyes aren't bloodshot. He threatens to hurt you and looks in the bag. The bag contains his wife's zombified head. Clementine is able to sneak out, and Lee manages to gesture with his eyes to what item she should grab. And then there's this comedic moment.
I miss you so much, Tess. You're gonna like Clementine a lot, though. She's not Lizzie, but she's sweet. She wouldn't hurt a fly.
Yeah, definitely not gonna not hurt anyone. You knock the gun out of his hand, and when he tries to go for it, you then slam him into a wall. You have to keep mashing the button after it disappears if you want to kill him here. Otherwise, he gets the better of you, and Clementine saves you by shooting him in the head. I like both options here because killing the stranger yourself and shooting him in the head as an act of mercy so he doesn't come back is a good way to show what kind of man your Lee has become. Having Clementine do it proves that she's starting to trust herself to make hard calls in situations where she is going to have to do that more and more, especially now that Lee is not going to be around much longer. We hug Clem, and if we're missing an arm, Clem will comment on it. We have a heartfelt reunion. If Clem kills the stranger, Lee has this touching line.
Hey. You saved me.
it's my...
The new objective is to get to a safe place so Lee can have one last talk with Clem about things before getting her to safety. Lee's protectiveness returns as he tells Clem not to look in the bag that contains the stranger's wife's head. When we open a door, a walker stands there for a bit and doesn't seem to attack Lee, which quickly leads Lee and Clem to grasp an aspect of the larger Walking Dead universe from the comics. Walkers use smell to locate their prey that's close to them as well as sound, so if you smell like them, you have a better chance of being able to move through them. We cover ourselves and Clem in walker guts, but she's missing something.
And you're missing something.
I thought it was gone.
I thought you were gone.
Thank you.
They shamble slowly through the streets of Savannah in another tense scene, but the smell trick is working. Lee hobbling more due to the exhaustion more than anything else. And then... This was Clem's worst fear. Her parents were really dead. There was nothing for her here. She was taken advantage of by the deceptive words of the stranger, and now they're in a herd of walkers looking at her parents, who are now walkers. Lee tries to tell her not to look, but he passes out. I don't know how Clem did this, but she managed to drag a full-grown man into one of the slightly open jewelry stores in a walker-infested street. I can suspend my disbelief because we've seen her be resourceful before. She saw her parents, and Lee can offer her comfort after having learned that they were really gone.
I saw my parents.
Come here, sweet pea.
Clem says she locked the gate behind them, and Lee, in a panic, tells her to get it open at all costs. Clem obviously has no idea what happened. Lee is too weak, the gate won't open, and now one of the most difficult moments in the whole game, looking into Clementine's eyes and telling her,
My arm is gone because I cut it off.
Why would you do that?
Because I was bitten, Clem.
Please, no. No. That's not true.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, Clementine. I'm supposed to take care of you. I can't now.
I know.
This part had me bawling on my first, second, 12th playthrough. Lee was her world. Everything Lee did, whatever atrocities or kindnesses, every lesson, every choice Lee ever made, in some way was a lesson for Clementine or in aid of helping Clementine. Even if Lee didn't want to admit it, even if you play as the coldest Lee, she still looks up to you like she would her dad, and now in this moment that is gone. This is the last time she will see you, and this room will be your grave. If you weren't crying at that, what about when Lee got up only to drag his body on the counter while Clem tries to help you, only to collapse on the wall next to the radiator with Clem begging for you to get up? You look at her and simply say,
Clem, I can't move. This is it for me here.
This moment, everything you've done has led to this, where Clem and Lee have to make peace with the fact that Clem has to either leave Lee here or kill him. Everything is quiet for this. You instruct Clem into the tasks to get the door open, with the walker in the room stuck in a chair. Clem picks up the handcuffs off the floor as the music swells. Lee looks at the radiator. You have two options: cuff the walker or cuff yourself to the radiator. I think it's more poetic to cuff yourself to the radiator. Lee started the story in handcuffs as a murderer and ends the story in handcuffs as a hero. You could also interpret that the walker symbolizes what Lee would have been if it wasn't for that second chance at the beginning of the game. That you'd just always be a monster that can only be cuffed. What I'm saying is that I can see both options having great meaning. Maybe Lee might have one last bit of energy left to help Clem if things go to shit getting everything from the walker, which they do, and not being cuffed does help, as does having an arm, believe it or not. This is where the story has so much symbolism, and the cuffs are emblematic of important writing choices that have been made throughout the game, and I hope you can see that now. Regardless of who you cuff, the walker breaks free, and there's a struggle with the walker in which you get hit in the fucking head with an ornament. Talk about kicking someone when you're down. You manage to get the bat to Clem, and the walker is killed by her. This isn't her first walker kill, but it is her first kill using her smarts, agility, and physical knowledge to overpower a walker. Sure, Lee was present and managed to kick the baseball bat towards her, but she did it. This is her step into a world where she takes care of herself. A mentor dying and passing on his knowledge to a younger student. A surrogate father watching his daughter take a step towards independence and maturity. She picks up the gun and you're given a final interaction with Clem. This is immensely sad.
You're strong, Clem. You can do anything.
But I'm little.
Doesn't mean nothing. You're gonna see bad stuff, but it's okay.
These are the final words of a man who saved a girl's life, and now that girl looks at him helpless, vulnerable. She has the gun and a choice. Technically, you guide Clem to the choice you want for Lee. This functions as you catering to an ending to your story. To the Lee you believe in, either Clementine leaves and you get a final smile from Lee before his head drops, or he tells her to keep that hair short and closes his eyes for the last time. What an absolutely phenomenal story, taking a concept as old and tired as zombies, and not even using fast, aggressive zombies, just a lumbering threat, a force of nature that forces people to the brink, clasping at everything they can make sense of in a world that no longer wants them in it, using that as a starting block for exploring the nature of humanity and what does it mean to be human. You play as a murderer, and by the end you leave feeling he served his penance and helped so many people along the way, and left a lasting impact that'll be felt for years to come in the minds of those who survived, no matter how he behaved. Lee as a character has no wrong way to be played, but there are definitely ways you can play which lead to worse story outcomes, or flat out make you feel like you played a bad Lee. Is it a failing on you as a player if Kenny doesn't follow you to find Clementine? Was it worth it to protect Clem if it had come back to haunt you in the face of a man who you stole from? And yes, it doesn't matter if you stood to the side, you benefited from the group taking that stuff. When we talk about systemic privilege, what we mean is that even if you didn't have any part of it, the fact that you are flourishing is due to the suffrage of others by those you call your group of survivors. Was it worth your soul?
In Logan, a movie with a very similar theme, one of my favorite movies as well, superhero movies that is. Yes, I do have daddy issues, how can you tell? In that movie, he's given up on life because he's led a life of violence and found himself feeling empty, even though violence was a necessity, one that many other characters could not make the leap into. He's killed before. Xavier and Laura in that movie watch a movie called Shane from 1953. Shane is a mirror to Logan in that movie. He's a gunfighter who is killed and made killing his calling, and then tried to settle down before being pulled into a gunfight, riding off into the distance as he looks at Joey and essentially tells him that killing leaves a mark. Even when it's necessary, a life of peace is never an option for someone who has done so much killing. They tried very hard to make it look like I just had one arm, but the green screen thing that I'm using keeps cutting out my hand doing strange movements, so it's not exactly working very well. It just looks like I'm doing this the whole time, which I'm not. Imagine that I had one hand, okay? Just imagine it, okay? It's theater of the mind.
So in the case of Lee, if you played him as someone averse to murder, you could view his story as a man who took a life and chose never to do that again, only to be forced right at the end to do it against all odds. Or your Lee saw his killing as a justified response and necessity for survival in a world far more hostile than his first killing, and he should be the one to do it because he's killed before and he's ready to take that step. People often criticize characters that opt for not killing when the person in question is an evil monster. But there are alternatives to murder, and those stories don't usually end with the villain getting a weekend therapy session for their bad behavior. Often the punishment might be considered even worse than death or appropriate reparations.
Characters who don't want to resort to killing are often worried about what they will become if they cross that line, or they don't think that it will solve the underlying issue. Just like Kreia said,
"It is a far greater victory to make another see through your eyes than to close theirs. forever.
I could go on, but the point is that the way The Walking Dead is written, almost every choice you make has logic behind it, something that could be justified. The only one I disagree with is dropping Ben. Lee dropping Ben stains him as a character. On my first playthrough, I can understand you justifying this as not having enough time to escape and save him, but in reality, you did, and you should have at least tried. Dropping a suicidal kid is so inexcusable to me, and I can't see any situation where I'd agree that Lee is anything other than a villain doing this. The same can be said about threatening Vernon. Even then, I understand that Lee was in a dangerous situation with a gun pointed at him, but he showed them he was more than capable of violence, and then he could have backed off. Showing his teeth would have been enough, but then you can also lie about your relationship to Clementine. I could see the argument that Lee didn't lie. He sees himself as Clem's dad, but I don't think she sees him that way, so I'm not comfortable with jumping the gun on that. Ha ha ha. It also may be a play of absolute necessity, saying anything you can to get out of this dangerous situation with a guide. Lee acts as the player wishes, most of the time. There are times where your responses don't align with the tone of the text, and that's a common problem in choice dialogue in video games, so it's not as much of an issue as it could be. There are also times, like in the car with the officer and when the stranger threatens you, that give you the impression Lee is also his own character and can make his own choices that preserve his life even if he badly wants to do otherwise. I find it so interesting to look at all the branches in Lee's development, and I hope during this analysis you can see that I've put in the work to really take a deep look at all the characters. Lee is one of the greatest protagonists in fiction, not just because his choices change the rationale behind his actions, but also because they change who he is. I've seen arguments from people saying that the choices in the games don't change much and it's more of an illusion of choice because the story ends up the same in the end, so how can any of the choices be meaningful? And I vehemently disagree. The start of an adventure and the end of one are not as satisfying as the events that got them there. Sometimes. There are exceptions to this rule. But even if the result is the same, it's the journey and why everything happened the way it did that makes the choices matter. There are small dialogues, comments, quips based on every choice you make throughout the game and the way it colors the characters' impressions of you, and if the script wasn't long enough, I'd dissect every single one. And now to talk about Clementine for a moment. Clementine, as of right now, is the face of the series, but the reasoning for that is her initial characterization. She wouldn't have worked if she was Duck. Duck served as a juxtaposition on just how good her character was. She's cautious, mischievous, resourceful, and helpful, while also having an impeccable voice actress that sent me reeling in tears during this final moment with Lee. While having all these traits which make her endearing, we see her through the lens of Lee, which allows her to make her own choices for better or worse, which strengthens their relationship. She doesn't wear her heart on her sleeve and is more reserved when speaking with adults, which makes it extra surprising or devious that the stranger managed to get into her head and convince her he has her parents. Alive Inside plays in most scenes involving Clementine, and at this point is a form of recapitulation. When we hear it, we see it represent Clementine. She's not outwardly expressive, but she's alive inside. There's a heart there, a gentleness and kindness. She doesn't shy away from violence. The world won't let her. But she hates it, even if she has to accept it when her mentor does it because she knows it's to protect her. Here's a kid who met a man she didn't know what to think of, showing her he's capable of helping her. It's the moment their relationship went from acquaintances to foster father-daughter. I hope you can see where I'm coming from in this video that's way too long. I think the way I do because I think that these stories about people in a big world can be so impactful. Many pieces of media these days fall into the trap of wanting to go on damn foolish crusades rather than focusing on a story about a few characters navigating their situation and coming to terms with things and experiencing their own growth. I'm not saying that grand scale fiction is bad, I just wanted to highlight a particular appreciation for character-based storytelling that I have. And that's not to say you can't do both, and you should really try to. A story where I watch some characters go on an emotional journey is just as satisfying as shooting a zombie in the head. We can do both. The Walking Dead is a critique on the humanity of characters in a world that has every excuse to forsake one's humanity. You are dead when you are a walker. You are dead when you give up hope, when you stop being alive inside, when you act out of malice to serve yourself. The walkers are a force of nature that encapsulates the absence of humanity, but the alive in it, some of them live in between that. Thank you for watching. And that's the end. That's wow. This has been a massive project. Like, it has consumed a fair portion of this year. Always thinking about how I can do the next one. Always thinking about what jokes I want to use, what inspirations I want to take from, if I want to make this joke or that joke. And some of them, I don't quite know if I feel good about them now. But that's part of the journey of creating content online. And I'm a very small channel. I've had 1 or 2 successes in making videos, but this is what I want to do with my content, is make stuff that I love and I enjoy and share my thoughts on things. And even if they're not as popular as like other videos, I guess, I'm glad that I made them, and I'm glad for the people that loved the series and loved everything about it, or had notes or had critiques or contributions. I'm nothing without the other people in my life, so thank you for being around. And I plan to do more video series like this. Because I'm a small channel, I broke this up into 5 parts, but who knows, if I make it big, maybe I'll have the resources to do a full movie of it. I'm probably still gonna like edit them all together and make like a huge video that people can watch all in one go. That seems like a good thing to do. But I'm not going to do that right away. I've got a very, very busy couple of weeks, so we'll see. But thank you for being here, and yeah, stay alive inside, and I'll see you in the next one.